Following the success chiselled by the original Dark Souls game, its successor, Dark Souls 2, had enormous expectations to uphold. With the creator of the Souls series, Hidetaka Miyazaki, busy with directing Bloodborne at the time, the development of Dark Souls 2 allowed new faces to instate their own creativity. But the game fell into development turmoil, with storylines and directions taking drastic pivots, and the final product of the game bore scars of its tremulous evolution. Even so, Dark Souls 2 remained true to the Souls series mystery. Throughout the land of Drangleic, we are provided a tantalising and thought-provoking story that has to be investigated and organised through the words of the characters, the description of the items, and the markings of the landscape. Encouraged by the fractured remains of potentially unfinished storylines, speculation and discussion as to the true meaning of many events in Dark Souls 2 was readily created. An Iceberg displays these theories and little known facts in a chart, with the exposed part of the iceberg containing more commonly known theories and pieces of trivia. And the deeper down the iceberg you look, the more puzzling and peculiar the theories become. In this video, we'll actually be looking at the combination of two iceberg charts, with one created by Miro Paladin and the other created by Gehenna Katansky. As we discuss select points on the iceberg, I'll be displaying a health bar, representing how likely a theory is to be true, with a full health bar meaning the theory is almost certainly true, while an empty bar will mean I think the theory is close to being impossible. So let's drop into the lake and explore the iceberg of Dark Souls 2. Original Mannequin Face Mask. The mannequin mask is a headpiece found at the Earthen Peak, and it seems like it appears in the Dark Souls trailer, but has a much different design. So why was this design changed quite radically between the trailer and the release? While there's been no actual statement by From Software, it's rumoured that the mannequin mask had to change design due to copyright issues. In Naruto, the Anbu have masks that are quite similar to the original mannequin mask, and it's rumoured that the animation studio Pierrot Company raised some legal issues, so it had to be changed. This isn't confirmed though, and I actually don't think they are similar enough to result in copyright infringements. It's more likely that the masks were changed to fit with the Dark Souls 2 theme rather than legality issues. Multiple Pursuers. The Pursuer is quite a mysterious character, who seemingly roams Drangleic and relentlessly hurts the undead. Like the bearer of the curse, the Pursuer constantly comes back from the dead to hunt the bearer of the curse. It's supposed that this Pursuer could indeed be the Chosen Undead from the previous game. It would make sense if the Chosen Undead ended up siding with Karth, bringing about the Age of Dark. And in the future, they would want to hunt any other undead that are trying to link the flame. And in this game, that could be the bearer of the curse. But this of course is just a theory, as there's no evidence that the pursuers you encounter are even the same character each time. One particular encounter actually heavily discredits this theory. When you are in the New Game Plus save of the game, two pursuers spawn at Drangleic Castle to attack the player. This fight suggests that the pursuer is actually a profession, rather than just a single character. The giants had faces. Vendrick, who was once the great king of Drangleic, crossed the ocean to combat the giants, pillaging their land, and then brought back an unspecified prize. The giants, intent on revenge, crossed the sea to the lands of Drangleic, laying siege upon the Drangleic castle. When the bearer of the curse traverses the land, only a few giants remain, and these giants are quite ghastly looking, with a large gaping hole taking up most of their face. However, if we venture into the memory of Jay, we can notice a burnt giant corpse. But this giant is different. It has a face, full of eyes and teeth. Was this corpse placed there on purpose, or was this just a development oversight? The making of Dark Souls 2 shows a development model of the giants, which seems to be quite similar to an enemy shown in the Despair release trailer. There's also concept art of giants, showing that they were originally meant to have faces. Changing the giant's appearance mid-development, and forgetting to change all the models of the giants does seem like a possible reason. But could this be explained in the Dark Souls universe? Giants in the original Dark Souls seemingly had faces, and Yhorm the Giant in Dark Souls 3 also had a face underneath his hood. So there are some giants that have faces, while there are others that don't. Waylander 893 suggests that most of the giants that we see in Drangleic, including the ones within memories, are not actually giants, but are golems who are harbouring giant souls. They propose that the kingdom across the sea, where the giants had come from, were also suffering from an undead curse. But the giants managed to escape this curse by transferring their souls into the bodies of mud and stone, rendering themselves immortal. When they die, they become trees and drop seeds, continuing their great cycle of regeneration, being formed and returning to the earth's clay. But how did they manage to relocate their souls? They did this by using the Ashen Mist Heart, which was the prize that Vendrick would later steal, managing to then create golems himself, having been experimenting to try and find a cure to the curse. One of the bosses in Drangleic, the Smelter Demon, has a similar absence of face to the giants, but he's described as a massive iron that had been given a soul, much like a golem. But for this theory to be correct, we've had to make a lot of assumptions, especially around the Ashen Mist Heart, so maybe there are some other theories out there. Ashen Shroom suggests that the giants that we see in Dark Souls 2 are the same species as the other Dark Souls giants, but they are just hollowed. The giants that we find in Dark Souls 2 have lost their faces because they're accursed, transitioning from the giants we see in Dark Souls 1 to their final hollow state of a tree. Yhorm the Giant also wears quite similar clothing to the Giant Lord, except that the Giant Lord is without a face, being hollow. In Dark Souls 3, we can also see hollows transforming into trees, meaning this transformation is not exclusive to giants or golems. But then this leads us to a conundrum. If Yhorm is truly a giant like those in Dark Souls 2, then why was he buried? Should he not have just turned into a tree when he died? There's a message in front of Yhorm's throne that reads, "Only a storm can fell a great wood." Now at first glance, this looks like a subtle hint at Yhorm's weakness. But could this great wood in fact be a reference to Yhorm becoming a tree? Perhaps when Yhorm linked the fire, he broke the cycle of becoming a tree, with it maybe only being cursed giants that are felled into giant trees, like the cursed rotted great wood in Dark Souls 3, being forced to have no end. Invisible Hollows. A newly introduced secret in the Scholar of the First Sin are invisible hollows. These invisible enemies can be found with a light source, illuminating their shadows. They can also be located with the Ring of Whispers, where you can hear them when you're very close. Unlike most of the enemies found in the Soul universe, these invisible hollows never attack you, and can be found sitting down, still. But other than these enemies seemingly being very secret and dropping very lucrative loot, what else do we know about the invisible hollows? Is there a sad story behind these ejective creatures? One theory suggests that invisible hollows are just simply the next stage of hollowing. After a hollow has been alive for a long time, they could simply slump into a corner, sitting still, and ultimately becoming invisible. This could follow the theme of things fading away in Drangleic, with many ghosts and invisible guards being found throughout the game. Maybe the whole world is in fact slowly hollowing, becoming invisible. In Dark Souls 3, the invisible enemy of the Erythelian slave has the appearance described as a hollow dressed in tattered slave clothing, so perhaps they themselves also followed the same hollow trend. But this theory doesn't entirely satisfy me, as why would the invisible hollows drop very rare loot? Renoth suggests that these invisible hollows could in fact be created by Uldir, the Scholar of the First Sin, where his experiments went wrong. The Spitfire Spear states that the mysterious Lord Uldir secluded himself inside a manor to conduct various experiments. Those invited to the manor disappeared. Perhaps the experiments disappearing literally did disappear, and they became invisible hollows. There are 2 hollows found at Uldir's keep, potentially as evidence from Uldir's experiments. but there are around 30 invisible hollows that are located around Drangleic. But a majority of these are found in the Undead Crypt, which is a place for those that have become undead to rest in peace. Uldia himself also shows up in the Undead Crypt entrance, so perhaps he is discarding all of the invisible hollows throughout Drangleic. The hidden body sorcery in Dark Souls allows near invisibility, while explaining that perfect invisibility is unachievable due to the risk of dissipation. Perhaps Uldia, with the invisible hollows, achieved this perfect invisibility, which they later found out was irreversible. So the hollows are now stuck in their invisible perpetual doom, hoping that one day the bearer of the curse can appear and end their suffering. The nameless usurper is Lycia. Lycia of Lindeld is a devoted saint that wishes to spread the good word of miracles. Because of this, she sells many miracles. But she expected the cathedral to be bustling, but there's hardly a soul to be found there.
Without any goings on, I'll have to move soon, to a place I could help the gullible, by teaching the good word.
It seems that Lycia may not be as innocent as first seen. Rather than intending on spreading the good word of miracles, Lycia is actually conning travellers for their souls. Hidden behind a shaky facade, Lycia carries a soothing sunlight, which description states that it was stolen from the Lindeld monastery and never recovered. Lycia seems to be conning travellers and stealing from monasteries, but is she up to anything more sinister than just petty crimes? The nameless usurper is an invasive character that attempts to kill the player. This invader wears the same saint's set as Lycia, but the invader only uses a bandit's knife and has a slightly different face model to Lycia, and people use this as an argument for the nameless usurper to not be Lycia. But a hidden patch was released that fixed this invasion. If Lycia of Lindeld was killed, the nameless usurper would not invade the bearer of the curse. This is evidence enough for me that the nameless usurper is Lycia, being yet another string to her conniving bow. The Emerald Herald was meant to be a child. The Emerald Herald, whose real name is Shanalot, helps guide players through Drangleic to ultimately break the undead curse. She also helps by upgrading the Estus Flask and allowing the player to level up. In the credits for Dark Souls 2, there's a credit given to the voice for Emerald Herald as a child. So why are there two actors for Shanalot? Originally, it was assumed that this child Shanalot would be introduced as a later DLC, but this never eventuated. So where could this second Emerald be? One theory is that the old woman found in the introduction of the game is actually the older Shanalot. This is because both of these characters are Firekeepers, but this character is actually credited as the narrator, and that's voiced by Nicolette Mackenzie. As we converse with Emerald Herald, it can be identified that her voice changes pitch. In Majula, her voice is much lower.
Bearer of the curse, I will remain by your side till this frail hope shatters.
Compared to the Emerald Herald in the Dragon Airy.
Bearer of the curse, long have I awaited one such as you.
While some people argue that the voice actors just changed their tone between recordings, I think that the Dragon Airy being the younger Emerald Herald is quite a plausible explanation. When Emerald Herald meets the bearer of the curse at the Dragon Airy, she states that it was her own manifestation that led the bearer there. Many people did relate this to the narrator being Shanalot's manifestation, bringing the player to Drangleic. But what if this manifestation is actually the adult Emerald Herald in Majula, which brought the player to Dragon Airy? This may not be the final answer though, as curiously, there is yet another explanation for the child Shanalot, but I'll go into that theory further down this iceberg. Having taken what we can from the surface layer of the iceberg, it's now time for us to drop into the well to explore the body of the iceberg. The Emerald Herald is a child of dark. Continuing along with the Emerald Herald theories, Theo1386 speculates the true identity of the Emerald Herald. She seems to selfishly aid you in your quest to link the flame. But what if all is not what it seems? Originally, the bearer of the curse isn't Drangleic to just cure their own curse, but Shanalot guides you to become the next monarch.
Great sovereign, take your throne. What lies ahead, only you can see.
Shanalot later reveals that she was born of dragons and contrived by men. However, the dragon you encounter later, the Ancient Dragon, is revealed to be just a prop by Queen Nashandra, which could be evident by a pile of dead giants found in Uldia's keep. So could the Emerald Herald be lying about her past? There are 4 queens in the game, and each of these queens was formed from a shard of Manus. Each of these queens found a king to cling on to, and they were gathering power as a way to get revenge on humanity's defeat of Manus in Dark Souls 1. All of these queens manipulate those around them in order to achieve their true, sinister goals. So what if the Emerald Herald is actually attaching herself to you, the Great Sovereign? Maybe Shanalot is in fact another daughter of Manus, slowly harvesting souls from the bearer of the curse, and to keep up the trick, making the bearer more powerful too. Vendrick mentions that Manus,
one of the Father of the Abyss spawn, that confounded quintessence of humanity.
Sar supposes that this quintessence, while defined as being the most perfect or prime example of quality, could also mean 5, with quintessence in classical and medieval philosophy meaning a 5th substance in addition to the 4 elements. So quintessence here could have a double meaning. Manus could be the dark side of humanity, or he could be split into 5 queens instead of 4. So could the Emerald Herald be the hidden 5th queen? 4 is a number that carries heavy connotation in Japanese culture. It can sometimes be pronounced as shi, which is also the word for death. This number is a recurring theme in the Souls games, with the 4 kings, the 4 knights of Gwyn, the 4 old ones, and many more 4s. So it'd make a lot more sense if there were 4 queens and not 5. Broken Lordvessel. The Lordvessel is a crucial item in Dark Souls 1, bestowed upon the Chosen Undead and allowing them to approach the kiln of the First Flame. If we explore the basement of an inconspicuous mansion in Majula, we can see the shards on what could have possibly been the Lordvessel. But why would something of such huge significance in the first Souls game be destroyed and stowed in an easily missable area? One reason for this is that it could just be a fan service to Souls fans, providing Easter eggs linking Dark Souls 2 back to the first game. Actual Wasp does the good work of tying this to the lore by speculating that the lack of acknowledgement of the Lordvessel conveys the amount of time that has passed since the first game. This time difference can be seen with the Black Knight Greatsword. This was used by many of the Black Knights found within the original Dark Souls, but in the second game, the description of the Black Knight Greatsword states that it was wielded by knights who served in a long forgotten age. So with that, the Lordvessel could have also been forgotten. Interestingly, behind a wall where the broken Lordvessel is in the mansion, there's actually a completed Lordvessel. So what could this strange occurrence be? Some speculate that it was placed for a potentially cut DLC. But crucially, what this does is confirm that the pieces we see scattered around are in fact the Lordvessel and not just a coincidence. The completed vessel would most likely have been placed there, while the map modelers would have broken the completed model up into pieces in the mansion, without cleaning up the original complete model that was imported into the game. Holding Knight uses this broken Lordvessel as a crux for his theory, that Dark Souls 2 is actually taking place in a dream. The Lordvessel, being both broken and neglected, could represent the forgetting about the real world, and the long forgotten age is actually life outside of the dream. When the bearer of the curse is first introduced into the game, they are greeted by bright bugs, which share a resemblance to fireflies. Fireflies are a common symbolic in dreams, representing hope as their bodies produce light. The land you awake in, Things Betwixt, has a mysterious aura, acting as a connector between worlds. And through here you enter Drangleic, and in the beautiful Majula, Emerald warns you,
lest this land swallow you whole.
Could the Dreamland be trying to keep you here, aiding people to forget that they have lost their lives or have slipped away from it? The bearer of the curse has forgotten about their past, and in the introduction, Drangleic is a land that is hinted that may have been seen.
Perhaps you've seen it. Maybe in a dream. A murky, forgotten land.
Could this dream actually be happening right now? Ashen Shroom suggests that rather than this being thought of like a dream, it should be more generally thought of like the afterlife. In the introduction of Dark Souls 2, before we ascend to the things betwixt, we hear a song, sung by the Milfinito. The Milfinito were given song by the Great Dead One. Grave Warden Ugdane is also a Finito, whose task is to watch over the dead, being granted to do so by the ones who gave him the first death. Both of these individuals imply that they were created by the Dead One, Gravelord Nito, so the bearer of the curse's introduction into Drangleic could actually represent their entry into the afterlife. Either way though, the place of Drangleic is a real place within Dark Souls, as King Vendrick is suggested in Dark Souls 3, with his demising all-consuming thirst being mentioned in the Shield of Want. But what happens if Vendrick himself was not consumed by his quest to rid the curse without lighting the first flame, but instead was consumed by the same dream the bearer of the curse is in? The goal of lighting the fire could just be his goal to wake up.
I too sought fire once.
When the bearer of the curse attempts to attack Vendrick, he states that they are foolish, and they can't defeat him and his world, because it's his dream, and as the ruler, he can make up his own rules. Ultimately though, I think the links that happen between the different Dark Souls suggest that Dark Souls 2 canonically happened, and that makes this theory highly unlikely. The Old Dragon Slayer is Ornstein. The Old Dragon Slayer is a boss we find defending the Cathedral of Blue. The soul of the Old Dragon Slayer states that they are reminiscent of a certain knight that appears in old legends. So who in fact is the Old Dragon Slayer really? And what do they mean by reminiscent? And why are they protecting the Cathedral of Blue? Many parallels can be drawn between the Old Dragon Slayer and Ornstein from Dark Souls 1. Both have a similar look and combat style, and both are protecting cathedrals. There are two main theories as to whom the Old Dragon Slayer is. He could in fact be Dragon Slayer Ornstein, or just someone who was inspired by Ornstein. In Dark Souls 3, Smo's hammer and armour state that Smo was the last knight to remain in the cathedral, which leads to the theory that the Ornstein in Dark Souls 1 is actually just an illusion. Ornstein was tasked with presenting the Princess Guinevere, and the princess in Anor Londo is revealed to be an illusion. The Dragon Slayer has most things about him being described as old. Old is an adjective that is often used to describe artifacts from the original Dark Souls, with the old souls potentially aligning to the greater characters of Dark Souls. So the Old Dragon Slayer could be referring to the Dragon Slayer of the original Dark Souls, Ornstein. The Ring of the Sun Princess in the original Dark Souls says that after leaving Anor Londo, Guinevere marries Flann, the god of flame. The Cathedral of Blue is in Hades, which is a tower of flame. Save Points speculates that Hades was built by Guinevere and Flann, and Ornstein had followed them to Hades, as it looks quite similar to Anor Londo. But the Dragon Slayer here utilises dark elemental attacks, while the Dark Souls Ornstein used lightning attacks. So how could these be the same people? Save Points counters that as time went on, Ornstein lost track of Guinevere, his one purpose, and darkness slowly took over. Arafarion speculates that Ornstein actually fought against Nashandra in order to allow Guinevere to flee, and this is what caused him to succumb to the darkness. This could be supported by clear battle scars seen throughout Hades. But did this battle have to have included Ornstein? Interestingly, both souls dropped by these bosses in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 are used to create the same Dragon Slayer's spear, with them both being lightning based, even though the old Dragon Slayer used dark elemental attacks. On the other hand, others argue that the Dragon Slayer is not Ornstein, but is just someone who idolised him. The similarities between Ornstein and the Dragon Slayer are just that of an imitator, picking up the duties of guarding a cathedral, and wearing the same armour. But their element of choice is indeed different, and the reason for this could be that their origin is different, coming from a different past. Because of Ornstein's soul being dropped after the defeat in the original Dark Souls, D-Boy9 theorises that the old Dragon Slayer is in fact an imposter, with the true identity of this warrior being the shieldless Lithian. The Dragon Slayer Crescent Axe described that it's the axe of the gallant shieldless Lithian, the only Dragon Slayer actually mentioned in Dark Souls 2. He abruptly retired from the battlefield and was never heard from again. Lithian is never seen in Drangleic. Is this because he himself is the old Dragon Slayer? Perhaps during the battle, when Lothian was growing tired, he learnt of the Nameless King and his knight Ornstein. Inspired by Ornstein, he built an area similar to what Anor Londo would have been like, and imitated his idol, slaying dragons. As for the old Leo ring found on the old Dragon Slayer, which seems to be a worn version of Ornstein's Leo ring, this could be explained in a similar fashion to Havel's rings. All the knights that wore Havel's rings were not Havel, so perhaps many Dragon Slayers wore the Leo rings. If the old Dragon Slayer is indeed an imitation of the tales of the mighty Dragon Slayer Ornstein, the individual could have been anyone. But Lothian has the most lore to support the role. There's also been some murmur around these theories that the developers and producers have outrightly stated that the inclusion of the old Dragon Slayer was just fan service, and a slight nod to the original Dark Souls, but I could not find a concrete source for this. Ultimately, if this was the case, then explaining the old Dragon Slayer as just being an imitator would make more sense from a lore perspective. Now, let's go deeper and disturb the crypt of the Iceberg. The fourth Firekeeper. Going back to things betwixt, and entering a lonely house, we can find 3 elderly Firekeepers, and their young housekeeper Milibeth. When conversing with Milibeth, she discloses that these old women are sisters, and she's been told that there was a 4th. But who could this 4th Firekeeper be? Milibeth states that now, Firekeepers are lost, being scattered to the winds. So could our 4th Firekeeper be somewhere out in the winds? Draug loosely theorises that this 4th Firekeeper could be Anastasia of Astora, a Firekeeper in the original Dark Souls. There was a Forlorn in Dark Souls 2, known as the Dark Spirit of the Forlorn Sister, and this would invade the bearer of the curse at the pit below Majula. It was theorised that this could have been Anastasia. This was due to her having the same dingy set that the Dark Spirit of the Forlorn Sister possessed, along with the fact that the Firekeepers, the Forlorn, and Anastasia are all women. Mysteriously, the Forlorn Sister character seemingly disappeared from Dark Souls 2 without a trace. Pondwater clarified this by making an educated guess that the Forlorn Sister was most likely renamed to the Dingy Cleric Phantom, with both of these characters dropping the Dingy set. Other people, such as Prince Nyan, theorises that the 4th Firekeeper, who was lost to the winds, could in fact be the Lost Sinner. The Lost Sinner is eternally punishing herself for the sins of her past. Prince Nyan suggests that perhaps the 4th Firekeeper wished to bring back the Age of Fire, unlike her sisters, and was punished for attempting such a task. While indeed, through a conversation with Sweet Xiaoqua, it's true that the Lost Sinner tried to light the first flame, it's important to read the wording of the soul of the Lost Sinner here. It states that the Lost Sinner punishes herself for the sins of her past. If she indeed wanted to bring back the Age of Fire, I don't think that she would then want to punish herself. As for who the Lost Sinner is, Abhishrichia speculates that the Lost Sinner is in fact a Witch of Izalith. The main connection here can be drawn from the single Chaos bug seen on the Lost Sinner, which is found in Izalith. It's possible that the Lost Sinner is actually in fact just a shell for this Chaos bug, as only after the Chaos bug enters does the Lost Sinner stand up to fight. The Lost Sinner does not only drop the soul of the Lost Sinner, but also the Old Witch soul. As we know, Old is synonymous across Dark Souls 2 to hint towards the original game. So I think it's a lot more likely that this Old Witch soul is a remnant of the Witch of Izalith as opposed to being one of the 4 Firekeepers. The 4th Firekeeper is most likely to be the narrator that we are introduced with at the start of our playthrough. This old lady is of similar age and has a similar appearance to the 3 Firekeepers, and the other Firekeepers do reference the narrator.
You spoke to that kind old dear, didn't you?
But in saying that, the 4th Firekeeper could be Emerald Herald. Royal Sorcerer Naylan states,
They say that she is the last Firekeeper, but they say a lot of things.
And indeed, if we believe the earlier theory that Emerald Herald was in fact the narrator, then both of these theories make logical sense. Earthen Peak is Anor Londo. The kingdom of Drangleic is a beautiful sight to behold, but the once great land gradually decayed into a shell of its former self. The land of the ancient lords, Lordvessel, is also a far-reaching kingdom that has fallen under a curse. Both of these kingdoms exist in the Souls universe, but not much evidence is present to link the two together. One of the highest points of Lordvessel, Londo, is often used as a city to relate to Drangleic, due to the city's distinctively beautiful Gothic architecture. More commonly, people believe that Hades, a kingdom or land that predated Drangleic, was Londo, or derived from it. Looming over a ruined city consumed by the sea, the Tower of the Flame and the nearby Cathedral of Blue are all that remain of the ancient Hade. In fact, not even the name of this kingdom is known for certain, with the Hades Knight Iron Mask saying that the records don't date back far enough to tell whether Hade was in fact a kingdom, or just a name for the land. Hade is actually German for heathland, which is a low-growing vegetation habitat found in temperate grasslands, so perhaps it is indeed a landscape rather than a kingdom. The structures remaining from this fallen kingdom look strangely familiar. The presence of a cathedral with its fairly similar architecture to Londo suggests that Hade and Londo are linked somehow. We already mentioned the theory that Gwendolyn could have built Hade after leaving Londo, but are there any other theories why this could be similar? Inside the Blue Cathedral, there are prominent statues, which look very similar to the statues of Gwyn in Londo, but the heads in the Hades Cathedral seem to be out of place. A bird-like face is in place of where Gwyn's head once was. Gwyn is the Lord of Sunlight, and the falcon-like head shares resemblances to the Egyptian god of Ra, who is the god of sun. Loki Dark Souls also makes a connection of a divine blessing that is found in a chest in Dark Souls 2. Divine Blessings is holy water from Guinevere, who was once in Londo. Could she have left some divine blessings in Londo, with the bearer of the curse later finding it far into the future? Another point that we went on earlier in the Iceberg was that both Londo Cathedral and the Cathedral in Hade hosted a Dragon Slayer, whom the bearer of the curse would ultimately defeat. Whether Hades is physically Londo, or just a spiritual successor, is up to interpretation, but it seems like the roots of Dark Souls 1 most definitely stretches to the lands found in Dark Souls 2. With the same general approach, Iceberg creator Gehenna Katarski believes that Earthen Peak is Londo, as opposed to Hade. A perilous path intertwined with a familiar scene of a derelict castle, the Earthen Peak is connected to the Iron Keep and the Harvest Valley. For this theory, the Iron Keep is our main point of adventure. YouTuber Sanadis K explored and shared an early prototype version of the Iron Keep. Yet again, we can see another reminiscent structure that feels like it should belong in the great city of Londo. When fighting a particular enemy in the Iron Keep, the Alon Knights, a very familiar sound may be heard. This is eerily similar to the death sound of the Silver Knights in Londo. So could the Alon Knights just be descendants of the Silver Knights? Fura also shares this similar theory to Gehenna, stating that the Old King's soul is yet another crucial connection. Dropped by the old Iron King at the Iron Keep, it's possible that this is the soul of Gwyn, who would most likely have been found in Londo. So while it seems more likely here that it's just the Iron Keep that's Londo, with the connection between the Earthen Peak and the Iron Keep being a hot topic of discussion, it could most certainly be that the whole Earthen Peak is in fact Londo. Finally, it's time for us to confront the dark void that is the abyss of the Iceberg. The giants are the incarnation of the arch trees. Reflecting back to an earlier discussion in this Iceberg, we know that when giants fell, they grew into great trees. Arguably the most prominent tree in the Soulsverse are the arch trees in Dark Souls 1. The arch trees are theorised to be trees that hold up worlds, and are considered to be what gives birth to the land. Anything that has ever once lived remains a part of a great cycle of regeneration. So could the giants and the arch trees be part of the same cycle? During the Age of the Ancients, when humans and other creatures had not made impressions on the world was ruled by everlasting dragons and arch trees. The more commonly known theory, suggested by Duskpea, is that the ancient giants are actually populated by the souls of the everlasting dragons. Aldia, scholar of the first Sinh, was attempting to recreate the ancient dragons. Now when the bearer of the curse is in Aldia's keep, they can see many dead giant bodies. Even more conclusively, when the ancient dragon at Dragon's Area is defeated, a giant soul is dropped. Duskby hypothesises that whatever Vendrick took from the giants was not only used to create the golems, but was in fact used to create the giants themselves. The golems are artificially being powered by souls. Likewise, the giants are artificial beings being powered by ancient dragon souls. This is why they are so desperate to recover whatever Vendrick stole from them. In Majula, there's an obelisk with a worn down wall on one side, stating that the letters are worn beyond recognition. But curiously, in the Portuguese version, the sign says the giants crossed the seas, perhaps to return home. But what does this mean? Could returning home be linking to the cycle of regeneration that the giants are a part of? Could it be a war memorial for the giants that have fought in the war, with those that fell returning home? Duskby uses it as another piece of evidence that the giants were actually returning home to the form of a dragon. In the case of Chanalot, remember how she stated that she was born of the dragons? Could it be that she was a result of the dragon experiments that Aldia was making on the giants? But there's one problem with this theory. The giants in the trees remain a part of a great cycle of regeneration. But what of those outside the cycle? The ancient dragons are immortal, so is the question posed by the seed of the Tree of Giants towards the ancient dragons? Perhaps, like Eld Gustone suggests, the other entity since the beginning, the Arch Trees, are actually part of this cycle, and when the giants die, they are planted, patiently waiting for the Age of Ancients to return. Polo XGS and Deathsitsky propose an alternative theory with the premise that not only the giants, but everything is connected to the Arch Trees. Giants turn to trees in Dark Souls 2, the Undead Settlement shows hollowing of trees in Dark Souls 3, and roots appear from the heart of the Chosen Undead when they're hollowing. It seems that when anyone hollows, they are turning back into the seeds of a new life. Essentially, we are all Groot. One of the first Arch Trees that you come across in Dark Souls 1 is titled the Great Hollow. Now this is physically a hollowed out tree, but what if it's actually implying the hollowing loss of humanity? Everyone is destined to grow into Arch Trees, but then there was fire. The first flame disrupted this process. Humans and fire appeared, but so did Manus and the Abyss. If the flame dies, would darkness reign supreme? Or would the Age of Grey, with grey trees and grey water, return? Now I prefer this theory, as I think there's a lot more evidence to suggest that many more things other than giants are returning to become trees again. But perhaps the giants are a special and superior case to this. As for the obelisk in Majula, Illusory War went through this on Tumblr in detail, stating that this text was a pointer to new DLC locations. Every time a new DLC was launched, the obelisk would temporarily give riddles on where the new content was located, and after the DLC had been out for a while, the text would later revert back to being worn beyond recognition. So what was with the message in the Portuguese version? The translators claimed that it was an error, and the Portuguese version was added in an early patch of the game, so perhaps they were testing the DLC messages during that time. But even if this was a test message, it has to be derived from something, so maybe there is still some lore attainable from this, other than just being a simple development error. The Pendulum of Time. Dark Souls 2 didn't have the best times with development. Miyazaki, the creator of the Souls series, took a hands-off approach on the project and allowed the new directors, Tomohiro Shibuya and Yui Tanimura, freedom and creativity while he was working on Bloodborne. However, halfway into development, the higher-ups at From Software concluded that the pathway that Dark Souls 2 was taking was undesirable, and Shibuya was seemingly demoted, with Tanimura being the sole director of the project. Through this, the entire narrative and world was rewritten. For example, the tranquil scenery of Majula was initially intended to be a hub of sorts, depicting far larger structures than what was included in the final project. Even though the narrative for this game was greatly changed, the original dialogue could still be found. In an early network testing version of this game, some Japanese dialogue files were recovered. In this original dialogue, a scholar known as Velderic tells us of the Pendulum of Time. Initially, the Pendulum of Time wouldn't move, and the world is running rampant with demons. The Pendulum of Time needs to be assembled with a dragon's jewel and a drop of times. And then a hole in the logic of the universe would open, and the player could then cross time. The original Dark Souls teaser website actually had a pendulum that was teased, so perhaps this idea was left, or matured, for the second game, until it was later cut. Velderic's dialogue is the most interesting that we can find left from the original narrative. However, there's one more character of utmost importance from this script, Child Chanalot. It seemed that when you use the Pendulum of Time and headed back into the past, Child Chanalot is some sort of companion, and the protagonist gives Chanalot a feather, which old Chanalot returned at the start of the original proposed game. So perhaps this is the Child Chanalot that was actually credited in the game, with unfortunately all of her lines ending up being cut from the game. This also brings an interesting point to the surface, as many of the assets in Dark Souls 2 ended up as an evolved or altered state from how they originally intended to be used. Tanemura states that a large hole in the centre of a Majula town was originally in a different location, and perhaps this was changed due to a change of narrative. So with all the final scenery seemingly being a mashed concoction of the assets of the original story, could this also not have clouded and mystified the lore surrounding Dark Souls 2? The mystery that I keep coming back to in Dark Souls 2 surrounds the giants and the trees, and in the originally cut dialogue, Sweet Xiaoqua mentions the battle at the defense of the shore, long ago, where humans and giants clashed. Also ancient was the ancient forest, and this was perceived as eerie. Why? Because the inside of the forest was connected to demon heads, with the whole forest being transformed into demons. Marcy Mao thinks that this was an attempt to try and build a connection between Demon Souls and the Dark Souls universe, with the ancient demonic entity, the Old One, being spawned from trees. Velderic mentions that he pursues the soul-starved demons who may contain the dragon's jewel. Could these soul-starved demons be like the demons the Old One creates, who exist to consume the souls of the living? Unfortunately, the original narrative for Dark Souls 2 is very fractured, so many mysteries could potentially have an unanswered meaning. If you want to learn more about the original intended story of Dark Souls 2, I'd highly recommend YouTuber Sanadis K's video, The Original Cut Story of Dark Souls 2 You Never Knew. This beautifully portrays and explains how the Dark Souls 2 story and world was originally designed. That draws us to the bottom of the Dark Souls 2 iceberg. If you are still craving some more Dark Souls 2 content, I'd recommend checking out YouTuber Sanadis K, who did a lot of cut content investigation around the Dark Souls franchise. I'd also like to give a big thank you to both Miro Paladin and Gehenna Katansky for making these original Iceberg charts. And finally, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, because I certainly enjoyed creating it. And I hope to see you all again in my future videos, which who knows, could be about the suggestion that you make in the comments. Bye for now.